All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's Real Estate Roundtable. I am Jayson Bates, the host here of this show, along with Jorge Cuervas. How you doing, Jorge?
What's up, everybody? I'm glad to be here again. We are almost at the end of the year. Tim just got signed on, and I'm excited about getting the show going.
All right, cool. Tim just joined us here in the Blab. How do you like that music there, Tim? What an
that's right? Fantastic. Is that custom made?
Yeah. Well, no, it's I got it from not a copyrighted deal, but I forget what they call it, royalty-free music website. So playing it here for our show. So appreciate that. And you can reach me by visiting my website at www.valleyofthesunrealestateshow.com and connect with me anywhere from there. And Jorge, let's get this ball rolling. Introduce whatever you want to do there.
Yeah. Everyone, my name is Jorge Cuevas with Agent Redefined. I train real estate agents how to drink margaritas responsibly. And I asked a special guest to come on the show today. This is actually the first official guest on the Real Estate Happy Hour show. And his name is Tim Wangler. Tim's a good friend of mine. He's a client. I met him when he first got into the business. And Tim does a lot of amazing things, in my opinion, on working with real estate investors. He has a really unique perspective because he's a real estate agent that works with real estate investors. He has a construction background, and he brings that whole expertise into the arena. And he's a pretty straightforward, honest guy. He's got a great sales background. He used to teach. And I'll let Tim elaborate on it. But he used to teach men how to pick up women or train them how to be more confident in themselves and stuff like that. But he knows how to talk and he's honest, and that's kind of like a rare commodity sometimes in real estate. So without further ado, Tim, welcome to the show.
Thank you, George. It's men and women, and women.
Right. Okay. Tim, we brought you on the show because we're talking about real estate investors. I think that there's a lot of opportunity in 2016 for real estate agents to be working with investors. And if they're not already, I think it's a good strategy to start showing up at some events and start making some connections with real estate investors. And you are an expert at it. Most of your business, or a large chunk of your business, is with real estate investors. And that's what we like to talk about tonight.
Awesome.
So tell everybody how you got started, Tim.
Yeah, that's where we like to go.
Yeah.
Got started. I mean, everyone has their story. My story isn't all that special. I was in construction for 10 years or so. I mean, right out of high school, and started, working my way up the ranks that way. Ended up running crews downtown, was in the union, then doing general contracting, that sort of thing. Then the crash hit, and I went from eating chicken to eating feathers. So I had to find a way to feed myself. So started trading derivatives downtown, self-taught, was doing that. While I was doing that, I went through a breakup with somebody that I was dating for 8 years, which led me into the what they call the pickup game, I guess is the slang term for it. The underground pickup game, which is basically conversational skills, influencing during conversation, how to go out there and be charismatic and actually meet people. But then, after I was doing that, I couldn't trade anymore because I was having heart attacks every night, from all the stress. One of my buddies got into real estate, and I was like, hey, man, I think I'm going to do that with you. And so I met George. He was over at an office. George was training up. I met George. George started making me do push-ups in the office, treating me like a little baby. And here I am.
I make a lot of people that I train do push-ups when they fuck up.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of push-ups going on there, huh?
I was like, this fucking guy really making me do push-ups right now? I'm like, I am going back to where I came from.
Right. but like what's really amazing is that they started working, Tim Wangler and himself and with Steve Budzik, they started working with a lot of real estate investors, and there was one in particular that they built a great relationship with, and it was like a perfect sense of timing. They had a real estate investor that was they were at a moment where they were growing, and they were doubling their business month after month or quarter after quarter, whatever. And it was at that same time you guys hooked up with them, and that really catapulted your business and really gave you a pipeline of deals essentially. And that's what I like to kind of get into. Like, what was it? What do you feel it was about working with like this particular real estate investor that, you know, you were their go-to realtors, and they were going to give you their listings most of the time if you brought it to them, or even if they found them on their own, they wanted you guys to list it. What was it that made them trust you so much, made you like you guys so much?
Just never lie. I mean, think the first thing on any relationship with trust is just never betraying that other person or feeding them a line of bullshit. You know, I've always said the truth. If I think the property, so I mean, there's properties they think's the greatest deal, and I tell them, hey guys, I think this thing sucks. You know, I'm just telling you the truth. Here's why. You know, but I think the more rapport you build and the more value you bring is what really makes them trust you. And that honesty factor, you know, really helps. So there's a ton of situations. I could tell stories all night how they were about to give up on something. And, you know, George, I think you shot this video, actually. This was 2 years ago in Hillside. It was this guy, like he inherited like $2 million and ended up, he was like 18, inherited $2 million and just trashed this house, bought his friends' houses, and ended up racking up $50,000 in fines on the house with the city. And we didn't know the fines were on the house. They got it under contract, and then we were going to go to close, and they're like, well, we can't close. The $50,000 in fines kills the deal. Yeah, you know, and they were about to kill it. So I drove to the village, set up a meeting, tried to get the mayor, couldn't get the mayor, ended up getting the head of the planning and commission and the building department, and sat down and negotiated the $50,000 in fines down to $5,000. And they were able to do the deal and make a ton of money on it. So, you know, something they were just about to throw away, I ended up, you know, and by the way, I didn't get paid on the buy side. There was no, you know what I mean, real immediate incentive for me to do that.
Right. But you guys listed the home, and it was another listing, but it's sort of like a demonstration of how you deliver, one example, how you deliver that value to the to rehabber and clients. And it's examples like that I think is pretty phenomenal. Like you guys will always do whatever it takes. You're looking out for their best interests. And then what happens, what I think is amazing, is that these rehabbers, they kind of like go to you for advice, and they trust you. If there is like some inspection fee or any kind of extra fees or things that you got to pay for, you guys will pay for them. They don't even double check. They trust you, so that they don't have to nickel and dime you and everything. So it's a really cooperative type of relationship that you guys have built. And what's even more amazing, and I'd like to go into this, is that you guys spearheaded this relationship into a little brokerage.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have any equity in it anymore, but I mean, that's a longer story, but we did fire up. We decided to take all the business that this investor client was giving us, couple it with our real estate expertise, and co-branded it. Their name was Eye Candy Homes, and we made Eye Candy Realty. They were all about it. That made them double down their investment on giving us all the listings, right? You know, it's their name twice on the property. You know, they have a small equity stake in it, nothing that would make you squirm. Right. And it was a great relationship.
Right. And the key point here for any real estate agent is that you guys have built this pipeline. And once you build a pipeline of deals coming into you, whether you got your own brokerage, your team, or just an individual agent, you've got the power to be able to do stuff. you've got the financial freedom to be able to put marketing dollars into other places, to work on other pipelines, or just work on, there's a saying that you work on the business and you're working at the business. And like, you guys have a partnership where one of you guys is working on it, one of you guys is working at it, which is great. It's a great intersection of using strengths and weaknesses that you and your partner have got over there. What I want to get into is like how can agents, if they wanted to attack this and get into working with more real estate investors and use that as a way to supplement their business for 2016, where would you suggest that let's say you got an agent that's only been in the business for a couple of years and they're still trying to get that pipe going? Where would you suggest that they start?
First, I would get something to give, right? So once you have, so I always offer immediate first thing in a relationship is offer instead of take, right? So real estate agents have listings. This is probably a really easy one. If you have a listing that you know that's coming up that's going to fit builders, or it's going to fit a rehabber, I would go to a RIA. I would take that property. Hey, I got 123 Main Street coming up. It's a total dump and it fits your business model and you can make money on it. My client only wants $150 for it and it's not on the market. You go to these RIAs and you start telling these investors and these and rehabbers and builders these things, they're going to take down your phone number and they're going to answer your call, you know?
Yeah.
So that's the first thing I do, provide some value. You know, you have to get in and build rapport, you know. You got to remember there's a lot of people scratching at their feet trying to get business, you know. So you got to provide a little value. And I'm sure, Jason, you get the same thing all the time with lending, right?
Oh yeah, you got what's your value proposition, right? We talk about that a lot. So you got to bring something to the table, no question about it. Hey, real quick, I want to answer Cheryl Lynn Bryan's question there. She's purchasing an investment property. It looks like in Los Angeles there, and the seller's requesting 2 appraisals. I'm not quite sure why the seller would request 2 appraisals, or if the lender's requesting it. Seller's usually pretty firm on their price, so I don't know. Maybe it's the lender that's requesting that, Cheryl. And if you want to type a question, do the /Q space and then type the question. Then we can put it up for everybody to see. That way it doesn't get lost too.
Right.
Yeah, the lender's requiring an appraisal or 2 appraisals is probably because it's a flip. And a lot of times they want to make sure that the value of the property is there. So one thing as an investor, and Tim, you probably experienced this in Chicago, is the flip rule where you need 2 appraisals. If you sell it for more than 120% of the original acquisition cost, you sell it within 6 months of you acquiring that property, the lender's going to ask for 2 appraisals.
Yeah, that's actually from when it's recorded. So it doesn't matter when you bought it. If it doesn't get recorded for 3 months after you bought it, that 6 months starts from the recording date.
Yeah, good point.
Right.
So hopefully that answers your question there, Cheryl. That's why it's a Fannie Mae requirement, Freddie Mac requirement. It's not a lender specific requirement there.
Yeah. She's probably using financing, right, Shelley?
Yeah, probably using financing there. Yes.
Yeah, that's why.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah. So, all right. Now, hey, Tim, I want to ask you something too. Do you think that your knowledge, because it sounded like you were in construction before, right? Or you built homes?
Oh yeah,
custom homes or whatever you did there. Do you think that helps or hurts you?
Oh, well, sometimes they get pissed at me, but yeah, I mean, it helps me because I know square foot pricing. I know how things get put together. When I walk in a project, you know, and a guy has metal studs and he doesn't have backing for his base, and we know a TV is going to be up there, and I'm like, dude, you got to put some backing up here. A TV is just going to fall on the floor. You know, they get the construction workers get pissed at me, but it definitely helps my clients. My clients trust me. You know, when I'm walking through the value I provide, I'm not just selling the house for them. I'm really prepping them to sell their investment, you know, and sell a good quality product. So it's a double-edged sword. People get pissed at you. And, you know, I just had a guy on a $1.7 million house, the contractor crying to to the investor saying, you know, he's never been so embarrassed in his life by somebody by me. But, you know, it's
well, I think that background you have is important, but I think as a real estate agent in general, you have to have some input, or it's valuable to have some input for the rehabber on the kind of features that they're going to be putting into that property and what's going to sell, what's not going to sell. If and there's the easy ones that are out there. Like if it's a 2-bedroom house, you've got to convert that into a 3-bedroom house one way or the other, you know, because, or you're going to be stuck with a property that's not going to get you the value, the retail value you probably want, or it's going to stay in the market a little bit longer. So I think that as a real estate agent representing investors, like knowing like some of the design trends that are going on, you know, like right now we're going from that beige color to gray colors in a lot of the rehab properties. You know, like, can we talk a little bit about that kind of stuff, Tim, and your input?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing I want to address is a lot of agents. It's important to know something, but a lot of agents need to understand something. They're selling a house. Oh. When you're selling a house, you need to know everything about a house.
Right.
You know, that's what a lot of people don't take into consideration. You know, if you're selling shoes, you have to know everything about shoes. You know, you're selling computers. You have to know everything about computers, not just your computer, everybody else's computer.
Right.
You know?
Right.
The same with marketing. So a lot of people glaze over that and are able to squeak by, unfortunately, without knowing that kind of stuff, you know, and just opening doors. But if you really dig down and just take a couple of classes, you know, on construction products and materials, or, you know, the assemblage of them or how they get put together, check it out when you're in a new construction house and ask the guy how it works. It'll really, really, really go a long way.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like having that input into it, because all that time, that 3 or 4 months that the property is going under renovations, if the first time you walk into that property or know anything about what's going on from the day that they started construction is not until the day they're ready to list, there's all sorts of potential pitfalls that could happen. It's just going to make your job harder. And also you're not really delivering that. That's the kind of things that are, I think, an investor rehabber is looking for from a real estate agent, right?
That's right. I mean, you can make $25,000 on $1 million house. You know, some of these guys make 125 grand. You're going to make 25% of what they're making. I mean, you better know your shit, you know?
Right. You really are sort of a partner with them, even though you've got no equity stake in how much money they make on the house or anything like that. I think you got to look at it that way, right?
I do. I look at it that way. I look at it, I'm trying to protect their investment. And then I'm also trying to make them have the best product on the market for that price, you know? So just a lot that goes into it, you know? Unfortunately, my workflow is probably 4 times as long as other people's, you know, for you know, sales. That's why I love retail sales. So much easier.
What would your advice be, Tim, to somebody who's kind of starting out wanting to, you know, invest in some properties? You know, we talk about buy and hold. We talk about flipping. Flipping's been kind of a theme here for the past few years. It seems to be maybe more of a buy and hold maybe now. I don't know. I want to get your thoughts on that. And then do you find that people want to kind of build the Taj Mahal? They want this like blinged out house, just thinking that it's going to turn into, like you were saying before, into profit, when it actually may decrease your margins, right? So what piece of advice would you give to somebody in that arena?
Yeah, so I mean, real estate is like the most unique thing there is. So there's so many different decisions you can make when you're looking at something like that. But the way that I do it is I always look at what is the average of what's going on in that area, and then make it better and price it at average. So that's going to sell faster. You're going to have less market time. Mm-hmm. And it's very easy to convince your investor to do that, as long as, and this is the other important part, is that they have their margins under control. If they're paying retail pricing for their products and they're paying retail pricing to their contractors, they're going to get a 5% return, and they'll eventually be out of the game. very, very, very soon. So it's important. I mean, it's a bunch of different things. If you go to a RIA and you grab a hold of a new guy, a new investor trying to get in from the ground up, you're really, really going to have to guide these guys. I just had a group of investors I've been working with for 2 years. I saved them $5,000 on an HVAC quote. That it boggles my mind sometimes, but it's $5,000, and I'm like,
it's a lot of money.
Gotta check this shit. So
right.
I think the first thing is educate yourself on what you're selling, and that just goes for anybody, whether you're working with an investor or not.
And I think that's probably one of the advantages of the RIAs. And we're not here. I don't have a RIA. You don't have a RIA. Jason doesn't have a RIA. But in every city in the country, there are RIAs. And these groups, there's some good ones and there's some bad ones, but the good ones tend to do a pretty good job of bringing in different speakers, and they talk about different topics every month. And there's a lot of good information that you can get out of these free events, or sometimes they charge you like $15 or $10 to get in the door. But these are great educational opportunities to educate yourself on different various processes about real estate investing and rehabbing, whether it's buy and flip or buy and hold. And those are great avenues and great places I think you can get that education from.
Oh yeah, it's the number one place I would start, and I would just ask to follow some guys around. I'd be like, oh yeah, you're building something new. Can I come by and check it out? Build some rapport, check it out, ask them some questions. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that?
Right. I agree. I think that's exactly what you'd want to do. There's another a situation I saw a realtor come across, and this is something I was going to bring up to you today. Was that I had a client of mine. She's an agent, and she does real estate sales, and her husband does rehabs and flips. And they got a couple of deals going on right now, and she came across, a really great one. And she only had one other go-to investor. If they couldn't take it or do it themselves, and in this case they couldn't, they were just over leveraged, they had to go to someone else to shop it out. And they only had one person they really trusted to, and that person kind of nickel and dime them on what the commission they were going to pay out would be and all that. And I think but it's a perfect example that I think as a real estate agent, you come across a lot of great deals, and some deals, like even for some of your investors, it might not be a good fit. It might not be in the area, the ARV or some of their numbers and returns may not be there. But what might not be good for one investor could be a deal that's good for another. And I think that's still there's another opportunity there. It's like when you show up these RIAs, you should have 2 or 3 or 4 different investors that you start building those relationships with, so that you can, if you do come across one of these things, you can shop it out to a couple different investors if your main guy can't take it on.
Yep. A perfect example is this main investor that I work with that we coupled to build the brokerage off. I found an off-market property. I presented it to him at what the guy wanted. No additional fees, anything. They said, no, we can't take it. I now am selling it to another investor, and I'm making a $40,000 wholesale fee on it.
Really?
$40,000. So that's the power of having multiple relationships.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great example. And like
it doesn't get any better than that.
No, it really doesn't. And I think, and we've talked about deals like that you come across for rehabbers, and some of the spreads they're making, some of the money you can make if you just wholesale out. Like even if you're just the middleman in the transaction, it's a great avenue to bring in more leads and build that pipeline. So I think I know some agents can go all in like the way you guys are, or other agents this could be like 25% of your business. And so if you look at it as like, this is a way that I can get 3, 4, 5, maybe 10 extra deals a year closing, that difference is just, if you compare that to where you were last year, that would just be pure profit, and I think it's fun to work on these kind of projects. I think it's awesome to be able to have newly remodeled homes available on the market. They're easier to sell in most cases, as long as it's priced right, than like a regular retail sale if the rehab's done correctly. But I would have a lot more fun listing rehabs in a lot of different situations.
Explain real quick too for everybody, for the listeners, because I record this for the podcast, but explain the RIAs and the wholesale. So explain that.
A RIA is just a real estate investor association, I think is what it stands for. And they're just local community groups. And the way that they kind of exist is they like to sell products. They like to sell education.
Mm-hmm. Right.
They sell you a spot to go in and network with. I think the one around here is called Chicago Land Real Estate Connections Club. But all you would have to do is type in REIA and your town or major city in Google, and it'll come up. And this is where the seasoned guys hang out, and the newcomers are there, and lenders go to them. I mean, all sorts of people. Hard money guys. It's a big mix.
Right. The wholesalers, the hard money guys, the realtors, the investors, contractors. It's a whole smorgasbord of the industry that shows up at these things. So there's great connections you can make, and in I think in most cities they like to use Meetup, which is meetup.com. Yep. That's like one of the most favorite platforms they use at meetup.com. It's just a platform for anyone that's got specific interests in mind. They go to that platform and set up a little group, and then they post their events on there. So it's like a little calendar, and that's almost all of them are on meetup.com.
Yeah. And then wholesale, basically, I mean, these can get pretty complicated, but basically what I did is that seller, I wrote a contract to that seller saying that I am going to purchase the property. Mm-hmm. So I have that under contract. They agreed to it. I then am assigning my contract to this new buyer for a fee. So my equitable interest is getting transferred to them for this amount. Right. So it gets complicated, and I mean, you should learn how to do it before you just go out and start handing people contracts so you don't get yourself in trouble. But
yeah, there is a wrong way to do that.
And you can lose money and get sued, so you got to be careful.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, you definitely want to do that. No, I dig it. Go ahead.
I was going to ask, for somebody getting into investing and starting, their investment portfolio, a lot of people look at this for retirement purposes, right? Or maybe a hobby, but with the stock market and the lack of confidence in the stock market for a lot of people, they take this and invest in real estate. Do you suggest, because I see a lot of real estate investors who kind of migrate across the country and try to find the best deal, so to speak. Do you kind of suggest investing locally for somebody starting out, or do they go for the best deal?
Best deal.
Okay.
Best deal. Yeah. I mean, where the low taxes.
And you would buy something in Indianapolis, for example, or?
Sure. I mean, these investors were looking at a deal in the Hamptons, 6 months ago. They were going to make 14, you know what I mean, $1 million on it, so it's wherever the deal is, wherever the return is. So there's always somebody crying uncle for some reason. They need the money or whatever. And this is specifically for your holds, right? Those are the ones that I'm not seeing a lot of acquisitions with holds right now, unless they're spectacular deals. But that's just because our prices kind of, went up that way. They're just keep tickering back up to pre-crash levels. Richard, I'll get you in a sec. But it's anywhere. It doesn't matter, right? I mean, the thing is having an expert explain to you the area. I mean, if you don't know anything about, Orange County, California, and somebody presents you a deal, I would definitely do some due diligence and make sure, but it's wherever. I mean, if you're new to it, I would start local, because you're going to want to experience all those hardships close by. You're not going to want, somebody in California to tell you they left the oven on and the half the house burnt down, and you're over here and you can't check it out,
Right.
Yeah. I agree. That question we got there from Richard was, how many days for closing when assigning?
Yeah. So, Rich, I put 30 days out for the closing, and depending on what contract you use, it depends on your out. So you can do a couple of things. You could keep the attorney review open, that entire time for whatever reason, just drag your feet, have your attorney drag the feet. As long as attorney review's open, you're okay. And or you could put a mortgage contingency. Hey, this is cash, but it's contingent on a hard money loan. And if I don't close, I don't close. But I mean, you obviously don't want to have that the first thing that you're telling that seller. But
yeah,
you just put it in the contract, and if they ask questions, answer them.
Yeah. It's got to be a great. I mean, at the end of the day, it's got to be a great deal for the buyer too. It's got to be.
Yeah, it is a great deal for them. Otherwise, they wouldn't buy it.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Now on the buy and holds, this is a question for Jayson. I'm liking a lot more the buy and hold strategy. I've been watching a couple of investors in town here that are executing that pretty well. And like what they usually do is the strategy I've heard is that they buy a property and they take out a 5-year arm on it, and everything, whatever profit they have out of that, gets invested right back into the property. Mm-hmm. And they try to pay that off within the 5 years. And if they're really lucky, they'll buy 5 properties within 5 years and try to get at least 3 of those paid off completely by the end of that time, and refi the other ones, and basically just try to build assets, but have at the end game is like 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, you've got a whole portfolio of properties that are already paid off, and you're renting them all out, and that essentially becomes your cash flow.
Right. Your cash flow. And then you take I forget how many years, I'm not an accountant, but you can take that depreciation on those properties period of time as well. And we're starting to see right here in Phoenix, was kind of the epicenter for a lot of investors across the country, right? I mean, it was all over the news. We're starting to see investors here in Phoenix starting to unload some of their properties. They're starting to liquidate some of those properties because, as Tim had mentioned, we're starting to get back to pre-recession levels as far as value. And I think some investors are getting a little wary of that, thinking that there may be another correction maybe coming. I don't know. It's kind of hard to say with that. I mean, obviously with what happened in Paris, that could happen here, and that could just change the whole game, right? But we are starting to see that. And I do see the ones that do cash flow very well. Rents are very, very high here in Arizona. Right. I'm sure they're probably the same there in Chicago. And so the cash flow on these properties, even if you have a mortgage on them, because they were purchasing properties for $50,000, putting, $10,000 into it, making it habitable, and then renting them out for $1,000 a month. When you got a mortgage that's, $300 a month if you finance,
I know.
So it's kind of crazy how that all worked. And those deals are still out there from what I understand. That's why I asked that question to Tim, because I think the Midwest has quite a few of those similar kind of properties that are undervalued, I guess.
There's a couple of spots and actually that was one of the strategies I was going to implement in 2016 for myself, was to just start build a little portfolio on those $50,000 properties. That's exactly what I was going to do.
Right. And then another investor strategy that I was talking to another investor that my girlfriend is a client of theirs. So she's finding them houses, and they picked 2 areas in the south side of Chicago. One's Markham, which is like this. It's a kind of like what would you call it, Tim? Markham's like a lower middle.
A lot of people call it Markham.
It's it's not a great area, but there's working class people in the area. Most of them can't afford to buy. They have to rent out, and you can still pick up a property there for about $50K. So, and this investor in particular is doing everything. He's doing what do they call when the government pays the rent check, basically? What is that called?
It's a Section 8 voucher.
Section 8, yeah. So all the properties he's got.
I'm sorry, it's not a Section 8 voucher.
No, it's a Section 8 voucher. Yeah.
No, they renamed them. It's like
It's something different now.
It's some fancy name where it's not as harsh, because Section 8 had
Section 8 sounded so bad.
Yeah, it's like
it's Section 7 now. Section
1 or something.
It's that voucher, but he's building a portfolio through buying properties like that and renting them out Section 8 or whatever the new term is for that. But it's a total buy and hold strategy. And, the same thing, that all they're looking for is build a base so that they can 10 years from now, that is their retirement, basically.
Housing choice voucher.
Is that what it's called now?
Yep.
Housing choice. All right. That's a new one for me.
Learn something new every day, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Go ahead.
so Jayson, let's talk about the relationship that the real estate agent, if you're going to approach real estate investors, there's no doubt that as part of your team is that you have to have the mortgage broker. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So you're going to have, there's different situations here. You're going to have investors that are looking for cash to buy properties, but also on the retail side, their agent's going to have buyers that are going to need to get pre-approved and are looking for lenders. So let's talk about some strategies there for agents.
Yeah. So let me just tell you this. If you have listings and you are not marketing them to get buyers and sending to your lender, Jayson, and doing, you are throwing money in the garbage. Yeah. I don't know how many agents are on here, if it's a majority investors, but you are throwing your money in the garbage.
Yeah,
I agree.
It's when I talk to some of the investors here in Phoenix, I ask them about their strategy, right? Do you want to pay cash, or would you rather take that cash and divvy it up in, let's say, 10 different sections and buy 10 different properties to build a kind of a portfolio or diversify yourself, maybe buy a fourplex here, single family there, maybe a retirement condo here, and have some different things going on in Phoenix. When it comes to the financing, right now Fannie Mae allows up for up to 10 financed properties, including your primary residency. So
11. Or no, including.
So you need 9 investment properties. If you have a second home, then 8 investment properties plus your primary. Now you can have more than that, but they have to be free and clear. It's only financed properties currently. So they do limit that to that portfolio, but 10 properties is quite a few. And depending on what your strategy is and maybe what your exit strategies are, like you said, Jorge, is that you could, in 5 years, if the cash flow is strong enough and you have enough down and the balance is low enough, pay one of those off. So at the 6th year, you're buying your next one. And then the 7th year, you're buying a next one, depending on how you've got it set up. So you could amass a 20 property portfolio in 10 years, for example.
Yeah.
So it just depends on their strategy. And that's one of the things I try to teach realtors is get involved with the investor that you want to work with to find out what their strategies are. And then we can, put an action plan in place to help accommodate them. Because I think too many people think, okay, cash is king, right? Cash, I'm just going to buy cash.
Yeah.
But that's a lot of exposure, right? Some investors want to take the cash and say, okay, I'll put the 20% down, and you can do 15% down now, by the way, if you have good enough credit. But you can put the 20% down to avoid the MI and then hold the rest in reserves, because Tim, I mean, you'd be the one to tell anybody that when you start rehabbing a property, you got to leave at least 10, 15% contingency in reserve just for, termite damage or, what the water pipe busts or, whatever comes into play. So you don't want to be cash poor and just put all your money and just liquidate it all just to buy one property. Yeah. Cash flow. What happens if that renter doesn't pay? What happens if you have to carry that thing? What happens if the property taxes go up? We're going through a reassessment here in Maricopa County because values were so low. And now they're increasing, like we mentioned before, that they're starting to reinvest property taxes. Right. And property taxes are starting to go back up. So that's something you got to think about as an investor, right? And making sure that it's going to cash flow.
Yeah,
I agree. So we got the RIA. Going to RIAs for a real estate agent, strategies that they should be taking on. Go get your ass over to the RIAs. Start shaking hands. Yeah. Start shaking hands. Get to know the community of real estate investors. And you don't have to know everything right now, but don't be afraid to ask questions. And I think Tim had a good suggestion earlier, is that just ask if you're fresh getting into it, ask when that you can follow him around a little bit, or her. Follow the investor around, see one of their properties, talk to them, find out what some of their challenges are, and what some of the things that what they don't have, what they need. A lot of times, a lot of real estate investors hate their realtor that they're working with, and they're looking for a new one. Sometimes it's for a good reason, sometimes for a nasty reason.
I take over a ton of times. Yeah. I take over.
Yeah. What's the primary cause for? Is there a primary cause you see a lot of times that a lot of real estate investors get rid of their existing agent?
Yeah, no, it's like the same thing with your leads. You can't just give that guy a house and then talk to him 9 months later when it's done.
Right.
It's the same that as much as you are acting like you don't give a shit about them, they're going to start to not give a shit about you.
Yeah, I agree. And then you go right back to where we started, which is deliver absolute top of the line value that you can, and if you don't know what to offer, you got to figure that out. And that's only going to be through asking questions. And I mean, it's just like approaching any other group or niche that you're going to try to get into. Master it and, talk to the pros that are doing it right now, learn and keep learning and be like just a big giant sponge. And then over time, you'll develop those relationships. As long as you keep at it and keep at it, you will start getting deals out of RIAs and stuff. You start attending them and making those relationships.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing too that I wanted to say that kind of couples into using your lender with Jayson is with any listing, whether it's your investors or not, and George, I don't know if you did teach me this. I don't know if you're still teaching it, but to get the premier package on these websites so that you get those leads individually and other agents don't get them. And then you can qualify these leads, send them to your lender, send them to Jayson, have Jayson qualify them. Boom. Now you turned what was just going to be 2 transactions, the buy side from that investment property and then the sale, and then start over again. You got 2 more clients out of it who you bought, who are eventually going to sell, who are now in your pipeline. Right. So you turned one property, 1 client into 4, or 5. It just depends what property it is. Sometimes I get 6 leads on them if it's, a super cool property,
Right. Well, that's one of the advantages of selling rehabs is that everybody in that market, that's, all the buyers in that particular market, if the rehabber did a halfway decent job, they're going to be checking it out. Yeah. They're going to want to see what it looks like. So what Tim's saying there is that how you market the property on Zillow and Trulia, and basically getting a featured listings package. I think you have a featured listings package on Realtor.com, Zillow, and now it's mixed between Zillow and Trulia.
They just kind of blended. But I had all 3 independently. I was paying $350 or something dollars a month just to have other agents not show up on my stuff.
Yeah, right. And the key to that though is converting those leads, working those leads, answering the phone, returning those emails quickly, right? To be able to convert them and put them into some type of a database, some sort of a CRM.
Yep. And Jayson, you might hate me, but you got to have your lender pick up on a Sunday night. You know what I mean? I get these guys on the phone, and the new thing I have with Zillow, and I suggest for the agents they have this thing called Assist that they just came out with.
Is it the VA thing?
Yeah, basically. Yeah. Except they're from America. They speak perfect English. They're like super bubbly and friendly, and they call your lead for you. Right. So you can get your leads now, and you're just like, oh, I got a lead. That.
Are you using it right now?
Oh yeah, it's the best thing since sliced bread.
It actually worked. I've heard.
It's the greatest.
I know. Yeah, I know a couple other agents that are doing it, and they've said the same exact thing that you said. I was a little skeptical at first. You have to spend a minimum of $500, I thought, right, or $1,000, or what's the minimum amount? $1,000 a month on Zillow.
Yep.
To be able to get the service.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I make my lender pay for half of that. Sorry, Jayson. Again, me over here twice now.
My nose is bleeding, man. My nose.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that relation. That is another element of the relationship between the real estate agent and their mortgage broker. A lot of agents want to get marketing dollars out of their mortgage broker. There's no doubt that if the relationship is like a 2-way street where both sides are working in concert with one another to help each other, truly help each other, it can work. What do you think about? It's called MMAs, or what are they called?
Something marketing agreement. Yeah. Okay. I don't sign them. The only time you have to sign them is if, say I go, hey, Jayson, give me $500. I'm going to go market. And he's like, yeah, where?
Right.
through Zillow, he pays directly to Zillow, or has the option to. You don't have to do that unless it's some kind of weird third party thing. But yeah, it's super important. And my lender didn't pick up Sunday night when I had a hot lead on the phone, and I was very angry. But things happen. But I was hoping he'd pick up. I spent 15, 20 minutes on the phone with that client, and I had him ready and ripe, ready to go. Let me patch you in on three-way, and then they didn't pick up. So, it's nice to close that circle right then and there, but we got it Monday,
Yeah, it's one of those things from a lender's perspective. They want some kind of value proposition back. Like I've done some MSAs here locally with some real estate offices, and they say, hey, we have 300 agents, or we have this many in leads. And you really got to get down to, okay, how many of those are buyer leads versus how many of them are seller leads? And you really got to get the ROI back on that and nail that down. And then you have to have trust, which is a big one for lenders, because a lot of agents can say, okay, I'll take your paycheck, but I'm going to send the deal over here to my buddy who I've got a better relationship with.
It happens, but that's
it happens a lot.
Yeah, unfortunately it does. And that one few bad apples ruins the basket, right? So it's there has to be a mutual agreement, and that starts with a relationship. It can't be just a phone call saying, hey, I just met you yesterday, would you pay for my marketing? And there has to be some,
That's how I did it when I first started. No one would sign up.
Yeah, there has to be a history there in order for that to happen. And
they want you to close deals too.
Yeah.
No one wants to put $500 on a guy who's not going to call the lead back, right?
Right.
If you were spending $500 a month with an agent, just kind of like ballparkish, how many deals do you got to get out of that, a month, or what are you trying to look? What are you looking for on your end, Jayson, if you're spending $500 with an agent a month?
Well, it depends, right? So, because there's brand awareness, there's branding, and how do you put a price on that, right? Depending on where it's being posted. In other words, if you spend $500 on a website that is getting a lot of hits on there, there's some branding that's, got some value to it. But typically you're going to want, $500 really in the grand scheme of things isn't a whole lot a month. So you're going to want at least one or two deals a month out of that deal.
That's it. Mm-hmm. Can I give 1,000?
Yeah. Right? That's the other thing too, though, Tim. It depends on the loan size, right? In some areas, if you're only getting $50,000,
right.
It's not going to add up, right? So you got to
give you $20,000. The king of the mobile homes over here. I'm selling mobile homes going out of style.
Single wides.
Yes.
One of the last things I want to touch up on was that we talked about how to get yourself in front of more real estate investors. And we all kind of agree it's getting to the RIAs. It's one of the best places. And then now we talked about offering value and giving value to real estate investors. So part of it is understanding what it is they need. They're looking for properties. So any way you can help them find those properties, any way you can assist them in that regards, that's what they're looking for. And then on top of that, they need agents that they can trust. They need agents that are going to hustle for them and work hard for them and want to actually grow their business. But then another part of offering value is that if you get the listing, which is the whole point of this, is to get their rehab listings, you have to have then a marketing plan to sell that listing. Because if your plan is just to put it up on the MLS and take pictures with your iPhone, that's just not going to cut it. You do have to offer more. And this is another area where, like, stuff that what Tim does goes, he's using a system that I created a lot of it with you guys with your rehabs and stuff. And you guys have kind of taken it now and taken it to the next level. Let's talk about marketing a rehab property, because what you guys are doing and what I'm training and doing is something that I don't think there's anyone else doing out there.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing is to get all the specs, all the finishes, everything in order. And understand this thing. Like I said, you have to understand what you're selling. If you're not putting it up and marketing it correctly, you're wasting your time, wasting the leads. You're doing everybody a disservice. But the way that we kind of worked it out, George, was we had so much kind of inventory that we had already sold is we were putting up the old pictures and tagging them, saying a example of what we've done already, an example of the kitchen that we just did over here.
Right. And let me cut you off there. Let me go back. What we're talking about here is pre-marketing a listing when the construction starts. And that's the strategy. And it's a phenomenal strategy. And I love doing this. But with Tim, I'm going to let you go in there, Tim, but this is pre-marketing the property, not on the MLS, but what we're doing is we're using Zillow and Trulia to pre-market the listing on. And we're doing that because of the enormous amount of traffic that we get off of Zillow and Trulia. So go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, so we don't put it on the MLS, and the reason we don't is the market time. When you have a rehab and new construction, people just view it differently. You can have a rehab. If you were to put your rehab up on the MLS unfinished and say that it's going to be completed soon, you're just adding market time, whether you put those, and the MLS has stricter rules about pictures. You can't put up a picture that's not associated with that specific property.
Right.
So we do that during the construction phase because of the exposure on Zillow and Trulia. You can't do it on realtor.com, unfortunately, because they're direct feed from the MLS. They don't take for sale by owner listings or anything like that. But you put them up on there. You get your professional photos that George shot from the other projects, and you put them up with those taglines, like I said, that say, coming soon, similar to this project that just sold down the street for $10,000 over list price or whatever, and you capture all those buyer leads because you have the exclusive listing package on Zillow and Trulia. So all those leads are going right to you, nobody else.
Right.
So now you're going to double end your rehab. And now you're controlling both sides. I think your investor is going to trust that you're doing a better job than some other random agent,
Right. It's the way I think now in a low inventory market that a property has to be sold. The coming soon thing, Zillow started doing that, and that has worked out into the advantage and has been a very successful sales tool to use. So now what we're doing is we just took that concept of the coming soon and applied that to rehabs, and it just makes sense to start marketing the rehab when the construction starts. And if that rehabber has that previous properties that they rehabbed, those are great examples to show this is what this rehabber has done in the past. And, this house is not going to look like that, but it's going to look really similar to that.
Right.
It's a great tool to create that interest. And like what you just said, Tim, if you work those leads that are coming in there, they're cold, but you can convert those. And that is what this is all about, is how you're going to grow your business.
Yep. You better have a good lender who's good at talking on the phone. Most are anyways, but you can't get a dud,
Yeah. It's a team effort. It totally is a team effort. You need a solid team around you if you're going to be doing investing and exposing yourself in some of those risk areas. Hey, Tim, where do you see like 2016? I know we only got about 5 minutes left here, so I want to kind of get your thoughts from your perspective as an investor. Where do you see 2016? Do you see it getting better, tighter?
Yeah, I think this spring's gonna be, everybody's just gonna be trying to keep their head on straight. I would really, and this is what I'm doing, and I suggest to everybody else, whether you're an investor or marketing or a lender, is get prepped. This is the slow time for everybody right now, December and all the holidays. Get your shit in order, because you're not going to be able to implement anything new in the springtime. I think it's going to be asses and elbows for everybody. It's going to be a really good time. Stack that cash up and save it,
Right.
But I think it's going to be good. So this interest rate hike, everybody's freaking out about, you know what I mean? I still think we're going to be in good shape. I don't think everybody's Nostradamus. I traded derivatives downtown professionally for 2. I would love when people would freak out about that. So,
Well, I tell everybody, like, the investors and stuff that I deal with, look, there's a lot of people coming out of that penalty box phase where they're, they have the seasoning from the short sale. They have the seasoning from the foreclosure. There's going to be some pressure. We also, we've done studies here in Phoenix about housing formation. about, the millennials moving out of the parents' bedroom kind of deal, or out of their bedroom and getting their own house. That's going to put pressure on inventory. And with that pressure means pricing. So, and more competition. So like you said, I couldn't agree more. Get your ducks in a row now. Here in Phoenix, springtime we always say after the Super Bowl. So anytime after the Super Bowl, it just gets kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Here. And it really dictates the rest of the year here.
Yeah. I totally agree with you guys. Right now, 2016 sales wise, everyone CoreLogic is projecting that we're basically going to have a repeat of 2015. Expect the same amount of price appreciation. Interest rates will climb up a little bit, maybe, but if they do, historically they're lower than they've ever been. It's not going to be like the end of the world if they raise it by a quarter of a point or whatever.
Right.
But I agree with you guys. This is the time of year when you have to be putting together your marketing plan. You've got to be, if there's something that you're not doing or didn't do this year, this is the time to make that commitment to get that shit done.
Yeah.
I totally agree, man.
And as long as gas prices stay low too, right? I mean,
dude, how cheap is gas right now? I love it.
I know, right?
I just started spraying it all over the floor. I was like,
they keep attributing it to like, people not using as much gas or something like. Heck, with this gas price, I'm kind of like using gas all the time. It feels like, I'm okay. Drive over there, cool. Let's do it. Doesn't cost me that much.
If I was you, I'd have that Tesla already. I don't know what's going on with you, Jason.
I'm working on the house batteries first.
Yeah. So that's it. I mean, I think if everybody did those simple things, I mean, listen and create your own action plan, of what you want to do. I'm not Tony Robbins, but if you have a strict plan for yourself of, listen, I'm going to go to the RIA every month and I'm going to build a new relationship every time I go there, you are going to get more business. You're going to, whether you're an investor or an agent or a lender. I met lenders at these places that I just give them a deal because they followed me around for so long. I'm like, listen, here you go. Thank you.
Even for myself, being a real estate photographer, I've gotten a lot of my business, a lot of my rehab clients I've gotten from attending RIAs myself. And I mean, it's a slam dunk all the time. Yeah, I agree. Listen, Tim, we're at the last 5 minutes here. First off, thank you a lot for coming on the show. You've got some awesome input on this particular subject. Is there any parting words you've got to say to everyone that's in attendance and in the live show and on the podcast?
Yeah, fuck motivation. What everybody is discipline, and you'll be just fine.
I agree with that. Stick to a budget too. Budget. If you're going to invest.
Yes.
I dig it, man. I dig it. Tim, how can the viewers and the listeners find you online?
Timmy Wengler on Twitter and Rehab Guru on Instagram. A lot of pics of my kids on there if you like kids. And Twitter's probably has the best stuff. You'll see me arguing with some economics professors and that sort of thing. So check it out.
Yeah, I love it, man. Listen, I definitely dig it. Jason, any parting words?
Yeah, no, like I said, just stick to a budget, keep a budget and keep disciplined, and keep focused. I think that would be the strategy I would use if I were out there spending money on real estate.
I like Tim Wangler's advice. Just fucking do it. And what would you say, Tim? What was it?
Fuck motivation.
Yeah.
Discipline.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. My name is Jorge Cuevas. This has been a pleasure doing this show. And I don't know what we got lined up for next week. But I think next week will be the last show before the end of the year. And then we'll fire up in 2016 with a lot of cool content. And one parting word I got, if you are going to say fuck motivation and start getting some shit done, I have the real estate agent marketing plan. It's a blueprint and it's free. I have it on my website at agentredefined.com. You could download it there. It's freaking awesome. And it basically just puts all the pieces together to put that marketing plan.
All right. Very cool. Thanks. And Jorge, I think you have sent that out to everybody before. So go to his website, get that. It's very, very helpful. for anybody in the real estate professional, or if you're looking to get into real estate, it's a helpful tool, no question about it. I'm Jayson Bates. You can visit my website by visiting www.valleyofthesunrealestateshow and connect with any social media platform out there with me on there. I'd love to hear from you. If you're listening to this podcast on iTunes, please write a review, as it is one of the only ways that I have to help improve the show. So I appreciate if you could do that for me. And until next time, next Wednesday, and I think maybe we'll do the year in review. Maybe that's a good one for the end of the year in real estate. But every Wednesday night, 5 o'clock, right here on Blab. If you missed it, you missed out. Please join us on the next one. We'd love to have you and love to see you here live on Blab. Take care and happy house hunting.
Thanks, Tim.
See you guys.
All right. Good night.
All right, cool. Hey, thanks everybody for being here. And we're going to do this every Wednesday. The first Wednesday of every month, we do the month in review as far as the news goes. So all the top newsmakers in real estate for the month prior, we do the first Wednesday, and then every Wednesday thereafter, we pick a subject and we talk about real estate. So thanks for being a part of this. Jorge, thanks. I see you're still in the room. Thanks for being here, buddy. I'll catch up with you probably tomorrow, and we'll get that subject lined up for next week. So thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.